It's a tough and very unusual situation for families to go into sanctuary. It's really generally used, I think, as a last resort when the actual normal legal system has failed an individual and they're facing deportation to risk.
And why do you feel as though the legal system has failed this family?
Well, it really comes down to their original refugee claim, and there were issues around the quality of representation that they had at the refugee board. And there was some key evidence, really the proof of what Jozsef did for a living back home, that was never submitted to the refugee board. And because of that, their claim was refused, and the board member found that they weren't credible, believed that Jozsef was lying when he said he did this work, despite the fact that the evidence existed, it just wasn't submitted. And the way the system typically works is that once there's been one strong negative credibility finding, it sort of pervades all the remaining legal proceedings. So one after another, different decision makers facing decisions repeatedly go back to the fact that he wasn't believed at the first instance, so they're not willing to, change the position of the government on whether or not he faces risk.
And in fact, the way that the lawyer handled the case has been the subject of a complaint.
Yeah, there's been no final determination yet. There was a very lengthy investigation committed by the Law Society of Upper Canada. They provided their report to the regulatory body, to the benchers. And the benchers, which is sort of the governing body for lawyers, determined that there was enough evidence to support starting proceedings against him, conduct proceedings against him.
And so this 2 years of limbo, where do things stand right now? What is the request that they have and that you as their lawyer have of the Canadian government?
Really, the central part of this case is a request to the government that this family be allowed to stay in Canada and have one fair, full assessment of the risk that they face. That's all we're looking for. That didn't happen at the refugee board. It hasn't happened in the other proceedings that we've tried to bring. And it's our position that the way we're going to get there is to wait for a final decision from the Law Society about whether there was misconduct by previous counsel. And if that happens, they can go back to the refugee board and demand that the refugee board look fresh at their case with all of the evidence, including the evidence that wasn't submitted by the previous lawyer.
And your feelings of what might happen to this family if they are sent back?
When you read the current evidence about the situation facing the Roma in Hungary, it's chilling. It takes you right back to, for me, high school studies about the beginning of the Second World War, what was happening with the Jews and the Roma in the 30s. The situation is just horrific. There are fire bombings of houses. There are attacks by gangs. There are, jackbooted groups of individuals marching and chanting anti-Roma and anti-Jewish slogans, taking over Roma towns. It's absolutely horrifying. I believe myself that they are facing a very real risk of persecution or beating or worse if they were forced to go back at this time.